So in this section, I wanted to talk about user mode health monitor bug checks. As you may know, this is one of the most common hang timeout bug checks out there. It started in Windows 2000 SP4 when they introduced this bug check, but it wasn't the default action to actually crash the system. That changed in Windows 2008, where it became the default action that if things didn't happen in a timely fashion, that the cluster service would crash the system. So I want you to be sure that you're familiar with what causes this bug check and how to go about analyzing it. So as you may know, the user mode health monitor bug check is a stop 9E. You'll only see this bug check in a Windows failover cluster environment. It typically occurs when the cluster netft kernel mode driver fails to receive a heartbeat from the user mode cluster service. As you may know, the cluster service is periodically sending these heartbeats to other nodes in the cluster, and when it doesn't receive it for whatever reason, it determines that some component in the user mode has become non-responsive. There's a variety of other reasons why you might see this bug check, such as the resource hosting subsystem, or the RHS process, doesn't respond or terminate in a timely fashion. This is a feature, not a flaw, so updating the netft.sys driver won't help. There's quite a few more details you can gain by reading the particular article you see at the bottom of the slide. So, in particular, I wanted to talk about the Stop9E bug check parameters. As you may know, when a bug check occurs, there's several parameters that are given to give you more context around why the crash occurred. So in this case, parameter 1 provides us with the process ID that failed the health check, whether it be the cluster service process or the RHS process. The second parameter gives us the time in seconds in hexadecimal notation for the timeout that was hit, so you know exactly how long the system had been waiting before the cluster service crashed the system. Now, the third parameter is new in 2012 R2 to help clarify why the system bug checked. As you may know, stop codes or bug checks essentially evolve over time so that you may see them enhanced at a different version. But the underlying techniques for analyzing crashes stay the same no matter what version of the operating system. Some of these crashes are just more teachable, shall we say, than others. Finally, parameter 4 is currently unused. It's reserved for future use and will always be 0. So parameter 3, the actual reason for the bug check, can occur in a number of different fashions. So let's just quickly review those. The first, if parameter 3 is a 0, then the source for the reason of the bug check is not specified, or it is an operating system prior to 2012 R2. Now, if parameter 3 happens to be a 1, then this tells us the RHS process didn't close gracefully and complete. A value of 2 tells us that the resource didn't respond within a timeout period known as the deadlock timeout, or 5 minutes by default. If the parameter 3 is a 3, then it means that the resource encountered an unhandled exception and the process failed to terminate. Similarly, if the parameter is a 4, the RHS process experienced an unhandled exception and failed to terminate within 20 minutes. If the parameter is 5, then a resource didn't respond and the RHS didn't terminate in 20 minutes. Or a value of 6 indicates that the resource type didn't respond and the RHS didn't terminate. We also have a parameter of 7 tells us that the cluster service experienced an unhandled exception and failed to terminate within 20 minutes. A value of 8 tells us that a cluster node requested this bug check. So if one node couldn't communicate with another, it can actually tell the other node to crash. A value of 9 indicates that a subcomponent of the cluster service didn't respond. And finally, one of the most common cases that we'll encounter when the parameter 3 is a value of an A means that the netft driver didn't receive a heartbeat from the user mode cluster service, and as a result, the system crashed.